Welcome back to the Glacial Gold Hunter. Today we're in the mountains of Wisconsin looking for glacial gold. Now, one of my favorite parts about prospecting is just traveling to new spots to see what's there. I get to see new geology and sometimes you run into really good gold spots. Now this is a new creek to me, so I'm not sure what's here, but the only way to know is to prospect. So we're gonna do some panning and hopefully find a spot for a sluice box. And right away I see a pretty interesting spot that I wanna try. So let's try it. Now right off the bat, this river looks pretty sandy, and sand isn't gonna be your best friend finding gold, but there's also a lot of bedrock. I'm standing on a bedrock plateau right here, and there's a spot where there's kind of a depression, and there's a lot of boulders collecting here and gravels. So if I can dig underneath the boulders to the bedrock, ideally, in theory, that would be a great place to look for gold, if this is a gold-bearing stream, and we haven't determined that yet. So we'll get to digging and we'll see. It's a flat piece of sandstone. Oh boy, really heavy round black rock. That's a piece of gabbro. Ultra mafic rock, heavy iron-rich rock from the volcanoes. And underneath that is gravel. Sweet. So what we dug up here, we got some more gabbro, that igneous intrusive rock. We got sandstone, and look at there, there's a nice piece of quartz. Looks like it's got some mineralization in it, some oxidation anyway. And most of the quartz you find is not going to have any gold in it, but those quartz veins that do, that's your source of your gold. So maybe this is our source of our gold. Maybe there's gold here. If we could find gold on our first test pan, that'd be really cool. And there's some black sand in there. And some lead shot. Oh my gosh. That's a good sign, because that means there's some heavy pieces dropping out there, getting stuck in that riffle. So if there's gold, there should be gold with that lead shot. It's a very fine black sand. Some of the black sand I find is kind of coarse, and some of it is this very fine silty sand. And I would say I do better when the black sand is a little bit more coarse. And that habit is continuing. I don't see any gold in here. Plenty of lead shot. Hold up, I lied. There is a tiny piece of gold in here. It is micro gold, but it's gold. I'm not sure that the camera can even tell what that is, but to my eye, I can tell that that is a tiny little speck of gold. Absolute tiny micro dot. You can barely even see it. You know, it is just nothing. So a speck like that might not be like hopeful, it's just so small. But there's more boulders and packed gravels there, so I'm gonna dig around, and there's some other boulders around that fit that same description. So like this one right here. Like this is all bedrock right here. It drops down, there's a lip right there. I can stick my fingers underneath the bedrock, and this giant boulder, there's gravel packed alongside the boulder and the bedrock. So I'm gonna just take and remove places like that, excavate those, and just see what's there. Just do a thorough job prospecting. So let me do some pans back to back, and we'll just get a thorough understanding of what's right here. And if there's nothing more, we'll move on upriver. Gosh, these are heavy rocks. Wow. So there's several buckets back to back, and I am just blown away at how much lead shot there is. That is the most lead shot I've ever found. Holy cow. So clearly that is a great trap and a place where heavies are collecting. So if there's no gold in here, that really makes it kind of disheartening that this is a gold-bearing stream. So with all that lead, oh my gosh, there should be gold with it. And there are a few pieces of just incredibly fine gold. It is so small. So there's one piece of gold right there, tiny little piece, and another tiny little piece up there. But it is gold.
What? Did you hear something?
There's something out there waiting for us. And it ain't no man.
So we might not be in for a lot of gold, but I'm kind of curious on how much lead I can clean out of here. So I'm gonna switch to lead cleaning mode. And I set up my sluice because I like playing around with the sluice as much as I can. So we're gonna clean the lead out of the river. Where'd my classifier go? Uh-oh. Oh no, I think it went downstream. Only made it about a half a mile downstream before I caught up to it. And it piled up along these big boulders and cobbles, all packed with gravel around there, so maybe this is actually a good place to dig. There's a new prospecting technique. Throw your classifier in the river and see where it goes. Wherever it ends up, dig there. Sure a pretty spot. And on my walk back, I'm also noticing that there's all this moss growing on this bedrock. And we've seen before where the moss can be a great place to look for gold. So I'm actually going to take some of this back and pan that out. This is all packed with river gravels, the river sands. That's a nice little sample. We'll pan that out. Well, there was no gold in that moss, so I guess that trick only works sometimes. But I'm gonna get back to excavating our bedrock ledge here and see how much lead I can get. And if we're lucky, maybe even some more gold.
And a buffalo herd, but you can be happy if you mind to. You can't take a shower.
Now I know you're probably asking, why'd you go back to that classifier? You had your nice hand trommel. Well, I have self-diagnosed ADD and I didn't bring my hand trommel. But I did bring this. So we make do. What the heck is this thing? It's a piece of iron. It's another one. Like a round piece of iron. Huh. I don't know what that is. We'll clean that out of the river too, I guess. Alright, so I kind of did a halfway decent job of removing the boulders, digging out the gravel underneath them on this ledge, and now we're going to see how much lead we found. And there was maybe a half a bucket of material in there of gravels that I classified out. There's probably still more I could get if I had a suction dredge, but we'll call that good. There's a really green piece. I wonder if that's copper. Could it be copper?
Mine's copper.
Doesn't feel heavy enough to be copper, but it has that copper green color. Oh no! Oh no! Oh, I feel like the raccoon with the cotton candy. Well, I have my low V mat on my sluice today, and since I kind of want to see how much lead there is, I'm just going to speed pan all of this down because the lead's more likely to roll off of that low V mat, but I know it's not going to come out of the pan. That gold's so small that might wash out of that mat too, I don't know. There's a good amount of black sand there. Oddly enough, I don't see any lead yet. I guess that's deep in the riffles. That's where it's supposed to be. All right. Let's see those nuggets of lead. Holy cow. Look at, it's a whole bullet. Whole bunch of lead shot, a whole bullet. Possibly copper again? But where's the gold? Well, in a spot like that, I know it's collecting the heavies, but there's just no gold here. So that kind of is not a good sign for this stream. Now, when I studied the geology of the area, there are copper mines close by. So it's very possible that these might be some green pieces of copper here. I'll have to hit them with a file to see if that shines up. You can see that copper, that native copper, but I'm not going to bite it now or anything. And you just never know what the glaciers rode over on the way down to this area. Maybe they rolled over some gold beds and maybe they didn't. It's kind of looking to me like they didn't. At least not strong gold beds. We did find some small pieces, but maybe they just didn't go over a good gold-bearing deposit. That would be my hypothesis. But 2 miles that way and maybe there is some good gold, so you just never know. That's why we go out and prospect. With or without gold, it's just fun. It's definitely more fun with gold though, I will say that. So now this rock ledge is all clean, free from lead, and I'm gonna put all the boulders right back where I found them. There were some dragonfly larvae crawling all over them, so they'll want their home back where it was. Remember, leave no trace. Let's go look at some geology. As I walk up this river, it's all on bedrock. This is all a sandstone formation, and it's cutting right down to the bedrock. So all the gravels and everything, they're just sliding across the bedding plane of the bedrock. And that's where that ledge was that we were digging in. It's not very deep. It's a pretty shallow river, just clean. And up here we actually see some bedrock outcroppings in the places where the river is eroding into it. And this is all sandstone outcropping. All across the Midwest, you'll find these beds, these thick beds of Precambrian sandstone. And this was all back when there was shallow sea deposits. There's no fossils in this. This was deposited before there were critters dying and getting buried in the sediments. So it would be like at the bottom of your stratigraphic column, if you've ever seen a stratigraphic column of the world. It varies everywhere you go. It's a little bit different, but there are sequences that are the same. And this would be your Precambrian sandstone. Below this would be crystalline bedrock, Precambrian bedrock, but that might be 1,000 feet or more down before you hit that. These sandstone beds can be very, very thick. See, when the water's high, it's doing a lot of work. It's carving a big crevice in there. It's amazing how powerful water erosion can be during extreme floods. All that gravel is moving like sandpaper, gouging that out. Right now, during low water, it's not really doing much anything. So it's the periodic floods that kind of do most of the work. And then everything gets to slow and calm again. Look at this. Whoa. This is really cool. And look at this giant boulder. So all around here, the bedrock is sandstone. This is a giant piece of gabbro. Where did that come from? This is what we call a glacial erratic. This is a piece that the glacier picked up from somewhere, carried it who knows how far, and then dropped it here. And the river probably tumbled it a bit, but this would have come primarily from the glaciers. You see these huge boulders, even down into Iowa. Glaciers just picked it up, carried them. And this thing will probably sit here until the next ice age. That's a big one. How much water do you think it would take to roll that thing? Holy cow. Well, this is a pretty cool river, but I think we're going to move on to the next spot and see if we can get any more gold there. Here's a little monument to Hotton Village, and you guys may have heard of Hotton, Michigan. That's named after Douglas Hotton, who was a famous geologist who found a lot of the copper deposits on the Keweenaw Peninsula. But he did a lot of prospecting in Wisconsin too, and apparently he died in a shipwreck out in Lake Superior. I just learned that. Speaking of Lake Superior, it's right over there. Since we're here, let's check the lake. Money! Oh. Wow! Why is there so much money on the ground? I always knew this prospecting would pay off. Well, I figured I'd give Lake Superior a try and see if I can find any black sand. I don't see any black sand here, but there's sure a lot of pollen in the water. Holy cow. Good thing I don't have allergies. Nothing in the lake. On to the next spot. Rumor has it there's going to be a competition for who has the best meat sticks. For that, I'd nominate Jim's Meats from Iron River. Best meat sticks I've ever had. But here's the next spot I want to try. Here's a big transmission line cut, and it's all on public land. And way down at the bottom of that valley is a river. I don't know how big the river is. On Google Earth, it looks like it's a big enough river, but it's a river I wanted to try, so we'll hike down there and see if there's anything worth digging. Check it out. It's macaroni. It's a pretty steep valley. I can hear water down there though. So that was a bit of a walk, but we're here in the river valley, and it looks pretty cool. The river has a lot of boulders in there, a lot of cobbles and sands and gravels, so looks like good material to test. And this cuts through a very steep valley. And I kind of like steep valleys because in my mind, the valley wall is going to be eroding fairly quickly, and that's just dumping material into the stream, which is your natural sluice box. That's what's going to concentrate the gold. So if there's any gold in the till in that valley wall, it's going to end up in the stream and get deposited in those strings. I even see some bedrock up there on the valley, so I'll have to check out what kind of rock that is. But for now, there's a lot of spots to choose from, so let's get our shovel wet. You can see some moss on the rocks there. That might be worth checking out. You can see there's kind of a natural string of black sand in the sand right there. That might be worth checking out. Although that is going to be so fine grained. If that is gold bearing, it's going to be so small it'll be hard to see. But still might be worth checking out. Let's first try some of this moss. It's full of sand. It's nature's miner's moss, natural miner's moss. It's very fine-grained material, almost silty. But there is black sand in that moss. We found good gold in moss before. Nothing. Okay, well, no problem. Let's dig in some of the bigger cobbles and see what those hold. Maybe we'll try underneath some of these boulders. Oh. Good grief. Use my adjustable size finger classifier. Ooh, that's a cool one. Surprisingly cold water. This must be a lot of spring-fed water coming in here. Let's hope. Let's hope there's something. Nothing. Check one of these strings of black sand. Nothing. This is pretty cool right here. This big fracture. It's all packed full of gravels. I don't have any way to suck that out, but that's sure a good little drop riffle. Right in that bedrock. There's no way I can dig that out. So this is a pretty big valley and it's a fairly small stream. So what they would call this is a undersized stream. People kind of always have the idea like, oh, a little bit of water, a long, long time, and that's how you get these big valleys. But you got to remember, when the glaciers were melting, they were sending torrents of water down here. A continental-sized ice cube, a mile thick, is going to put out a lot of water when it melts. So years ago when this valley was forming, this was not just a little bitty stream, this was a big river just carving into the bedrock. And then once the ice was gone, then the river kind of shrank down into the size you see today. So you also need to think about that when you're prospecting. This stream is very sand rich, so it's possible that if there was gold washed into this valley, that it got buried by subsequent sand flows, like what I'm standing on right now. This is a lot of sand, there's some gravel, but maybe the gold is at the bottom of it on bedrock. You should still see some flood gold in the gravels. That's what I would expect, and I don't see that, so I just don't think there's gold here. But there's bedrock right here, so I should be able to dig down to the bedrock underneath the gravels, and if there's gold around, there should be gold there. If I can't find it there, I don't think there's gold here. Well, I'm doing my best here, but I'm just not having any luck. Tried digging around the boulders, I've checked the moss, I've tried scraping the bedrock underneath the gravels, and I'm just not finding even a single speck of gold. Look in the same places I look anywhere else, so I'm just kind of convinced that this is not a gold-bearing stream. And that's okay, they're not all going to be gold-bearing, but if I go a mile or two over, maybe you start running into gold. You just don't know. That's part of the fun of prospecting. I travel far and wide all over the Midwest, and I've been able to sink my pan into gravels from all kinds of different glacial till lobes and all that, and it's so cool for me. I found really good spots doing that, and I found spots that don't have anything. But one thing's for sure, you're not going to find anything if you don't try. It's called paying your dues. But as of now, I think we're going to go home and weigh up our lead, see how much we got, and then call it a day. So we're back here at headquarters and I've cleaned up all the material, and there were a few pieces of gold that I think got by me when I was looking at it in the field. There's a few more specks there and I'll show you those now. So those are the smallest specks I've probably ever seen, so I probably won't go back to that creek prospecting. I've also cleaned up all of our lead, and that's a good amount of lead I took out of that river. Let's take this and weigh it up and just see how much we got. But first, there are also these pieces of oxidized, what I thought might be some copper. So I'm gonna hit that with a file and see if it shines like copper. That is a piece of copper. Wow. First time I found a piece of copper. That's very cool. That is so cool. Made of copper. I didn't expect to find that, but I'll take it. A 2.6 gram nugget of copper. Let's see how much lead we got here. Here's a big old lead nugget. 14 grams just in that. Oh, it's more lead than I can even weigh. That's 14 grams. I'm gonna do half. There's 25 more grams. We'll say that's 25 more grams just to make the math easy. So that appears to be 64 grams of lead. What's that worth? Well, we got all the money we found in the parking lot. 39 cents. So not the best takeaway we've ever had, but still there's always something interesting to find when you're out there prospecting. And it's always a ton of fun just being out there. Thank you guys for coming along. Come on back for the next one. Bye-bye. I also took all these iron pieces too. Leave it better than you found it.